Amora stood proudly behind her wooden stall in the heart of Lagos, her apron speckled with oil and spice. Her street food was legendary, with flavors that transported customers into realms of savory delight. Amora's Magic Kitchen was the name locals had affectionately given her little setup. Hungry office workers, market traders, and tourists lined up daily, eager for her signature jollof rice or crispy akara. Despite the bustling market's noise, Amora felt at home. She knew her secret ingredient would make every bite unforgettable, the water she fetched every dawn from the sacred lake. Few dared to visit that lake. Elders in the city warned of spirits that lingered in the stillness, waiting to exact vengeance on those who disturbed their eternal rest. But Amora wasn't afraid. She respected the lake, always offering small sacrifices of palm wine and kola nuts before drawing water. It had been her mother's practice, and her grandmother's before that. Still, as Amora watched the day's first customers savor her food, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling. The lake, in all its beauty, had seemed different that morning. 3 days later, whispers began to spread through the market. Several regulars of Amora's stall had fallen ill. Some suffered from feverish dreams, where ghostly whispers echoed through the night. Others were too weak to walk, leaving families desperate for answers. Amora tried to brush off the unease, but each rumor chipped away at her confidence. She could feel customers eyeing her warily, as if her once beloved dishes now carried a curse. It was the old woman, Momangechi, who approached Amora first. She hobbled forward, her thin frame wrapped in a bright blue wrapper, and leaned heavily on her walking stick. "Child," she croaked, "you've awakened something at the lake. The spirits aren't happy." Her words sent a shiver down Amora's spine, but she forced a smile. "It's just coincidence," Amora replied, more to reassure herself than the old woman. Yet, deep down, she knew the spirits never acted without reason. That night, Amora lay awake on her thin mattress, the sounds of Lagos humming in the distance. The memory of Momangechi's words echoed in her mind. She had always believed that as long as she paid her respects, the spirits would leave her in peace. But what if she had disturbed the delicate balance? Her grandmother's stories came flooding back, tales of spirits exacting revenge on those who didn't honor the lake's power properly. Unable to sleep, Amora decided to visit the lake. Armed with a lantern and a basket of offerings, she made her way through the dense underbrush until she reached the shimmering water. The moon's reflection wavered on the lake's surface, and the air felt thick with unseen presence. Kneeling, Amora placed kola nuts and palm wine at the lake's edge. "Spirits," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I mean no harm. Forgive me if I've disturbed you." As the wind rustled through the trees, she could have sworn she heard a whisper in return, though the words were lost in the breeze. The next morning, Amora felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she returned to her stall. The market buzzed with energy, yet it felt different, like a storm cloud hovering just out of sight. Her first few customers approached cautiously, and Amora forced herself to smile, serving them as she always had. But her hands shook, and her usual confidence was gone. Each time she dipped her ladle into the pot, she imagined unseen eyes watching her every move. At noon, a small child ran up to her stall, his face pale with fear. "Auntie Amora," he cried. "My papa, he's not waking up." The boy clutched his hands together, his eyes wide with panic. Amora's heart clenched. She knew his father, a kind man who often brought his family to taste her dishes. Her hands went cold as guilt settled over her like a heavy fog. Before she could speak, another voice rang out. "You need to stop cooking, Amora," Momankechi declared, standing firm despite her frail frame. "The spirits are angry, and more will suffer if you continue." Amora's fear only deepened. Each day brought fresh stories of illness, and her once thriving business was now a ghost of itself. Desperate, she closed her store early and sought counsel from an old friend, Emeka, a spiritual healer who lived on the outskirts of the city. Emeka's small hut smelled of herbs and incense, and he greeted her with a solemn expression. "Amora," he said, "I've been expecting you." He listened as she poured out her story, her voice cracking with the weight of her guilt. Emeka nodded slowly. "The spirits are restless," he confirmed. "You've taken something precious from their resting place. They demand more than offerings now, they demand your atonement." Amora's heart sank. "But what must I do?" she asked. Emeka's eyes darkened with concern. "You must speak with the lake's guardian spirit. Only then will you know the price you must pay." With Emeka's guidance, Amora prepared for her journey to the lake. She packed fresh offerings, including a precious piece of her mother's jewelry, which she hoped would appease the spirits. At dusk, she made her way back to the lake, her feet dragging with exhaustion and dread. The air felt charged, crackling with energy, and the water shimmered in the fading light. Taking a deep breath, Amora called out, "Guardian of the lake, I seek your wisdom." The water rippled, and a figure emerged from the depths. The spirit had the appearance of a young woman, with hair that flowed like liquid silver and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. "Amora," the spirit said, her voice a haunting melody, "you've disrupted the peace of the souls that rest here." Amora dropped to her knees. "I didn't mean to," she pleaded. "Tell me how I can make things right." The guardian spirit regarded her for a moment before replying, "There is a price, and it will be steep." The spirit's words echoed through the clearing, chilling Amora to the bone. "What price?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The guardian spirit's eyes softened, but her expression remained stern. "You have drawn from the lake's power for years, profiting while the spirits grew weary. To restore balance, you must sacrifice what you hold most dear." Amora's mind raced. Her business. Her life. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as she searched for words. "Please, is there no other way?" The spirit shook her head. "The spirits are merciful, but they are also just. You must decide quickly, for every day you delay, more will suffer." With that, the guardian vanished back into the depths, leaving Amora alone with her thoughts. Tears streamed down her face, and she wondered how she could possibly make such a choice. The weight of her ancestors' traditions bore down on her, reminding her of the sacred responsibilities she had long taken for granted. Amora returned home in a daze, her heart heavy with the spirit's ultimatum. Her small one-room apartment felt emptier than ever. She sat at her wooden dining table, staring at the flickering candlelight, haunted by memories of her late mother. Her mother had been a beacon of strength, teaching her the recipes that had built Amora's reputation and the rituals that kept their heritage alive. But had her mother ever made such a dire mistake? As the candle's flame danced, Amora knew she couldn't make this decision alone. The following morning, she gathered the elders of her community. They assembled in the marketplace, their faces solemn as she recounted her meeting with the lake's guardian. When she finished, an old man named Boba Ode stood up. His voice was grave. "We understand your pain, child, but the spirits must be respected. If you do not make amends, the whole community will pay the price." Amora's throat tightened. She had always cherished her role in the market, but now, that very community demanded a sacrifice she wasn't sure she could make. Amora felt the weight of the elders' expectations pressing down on her. Yet, she needed more clarity before making any decision that would alter her life and the lives of those around her forever. Determined to seek another perspective, she paid a visit to her grandmother's childhood friend, Momateyo, who lived in a quiet corner of the city. Momateyo was known for her deep spiritual wisdom, and Amora hoped she would offer some insight or comfort. The old woman sat on her veranda, shelling beans, her hands moving with the ease of a lifetime's practice. When Amora approached, Momateyo looked up with knowing eyes. The spirits have given you a difficult choice, haven't they? She said, as if she had been expecting this visit. Amora nodded, her voice breaking as she explained the situation. Mama Teo listened quietly, then sighed. Child, the spirits are a part of this world as much as we are. They seek balance, not cruelty. But you must understand that true atonement often requires personal sacrifice. Amora's heart ached. But how do I choose? She asked, her voice cracking. Mama Teo reached out, placing a wrinkled hand over Amora's. Think about what truly matters to you. Sometimes, the answer lies not in what you're willing to lose, but in what you must protect at all costs. Walking back home, Mama Teo's words echoed in Amora's mind. What did she need to protect most? As she walked through the market, now quieter and less lively than before, she realized how much this place meant to her. It wasn't just a source of income or a platform for her cooking. It was a living, breathing community, a family of sorts, full of laughter, stories, and shared struggles. Her business had brought people together, but it had also made them vulnerable to the consequences of her actions. That evening, Amora found herself at the lake once more, cradling the jewelry she had prepared as an offering. The wind was still, and the water gleamed in the moonlight. I need guidance, she whispered, closing her eyes. Images of her mother filled her mind, her laughter, her wisdom, her fierce dedication to their family. Amora opened her eyes, and suddenly, she understood. The true sacrifice wasn't just about her livelihood. It was about choosing to protect the people she loved, even if it meant losing everything she had built. With newfound resolve, Amora prepared to face whatever came next. Amora knew she needed to act quickly, but she was also aware that her decision would not be easy for everyone to accept. The next day, she called a meeting in the market square, where her customers and fellow vendors gathered with worried expressions. The sun beat down on them, and tension hung heavy in the air. I've made my decision, Amora announced, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. I will stop using the water from the sacred lake, even if it means my food loses its special flavor. The spirits must be respected, and our community's safety must come first. Murmurs broke out among the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, relieved that she was taking responsibility. Others looked skeptical, upset at the idea of losing the dishes they had come to love. A young woman named Kemi, a regular at Amora's stall, stepped forward. But your food brings us joy, she argued. Without it, what will bring people to this market? Amora's heart clenched, but she remained firm. We will find a way to adapt, she replied. Our joy must not come at the expense of our health or the spirit's peace. With her decision made, Amora began the painful process of dismantling her business. She packed away her pots and pans, her heart breaking with every item she placed in storage. The market felt different, as if the energy had been drained from the once vibrant space. Her loyal customers watched with a mix of sorrow and gratitude, understanding the sacrifice she was making but mourning the loss all the same. As she closed up her store for the final time, her best friend, Ifeoma, approached her with tears in her eyes. I can't believe this is happening, Ifeoma said, her voice thick with emotion. Amora embraced her, fighting back her own tears. Neither can I, she admitted. But it's the right thing to do. Ifeoma nodded, holding her tightly. We'll find a way to move forward, Amora. Together. The promise of solidarity warmed Amora's heart, giving her the strength she needed to take the next steps. Just when Amora thought the hardest part was over, a chilling dream disturbed her sleep. In it, the lake's guardian spirit appeared, her silver hair billowing like mist and her eyes glowing with a ghostly light. You have honored our demand, the spirit intoned. But the spirits require one final offering to restore balance. It must be something more precious than gold. Amora woke with a start, her body covered in sweat. What more could the spirits possibly want? Rising at dawn, she returned to the lake, her heart heavy with dread. She called out to the spirit, and once again, the ethereal figure emerged. "I don't understand," Amora pleaded. "I've given up my livelihood. What more must I sacrifice?" The spirit's gaze softened, and she replied, "You must sacrifice your greatest treasure, the love of this land." Amora's heart shattered. Leaving Lagos, her home, would be like losing a part of her soul. Yet she knew the spirits were serious, and their peace demanded this final act. The weight of this new sacrifice felt impossible, yet Amora knew she had no choice but to honor the spirits, even if it meant leaving behind the life she had always known. Amora struggled to accept the reality of what she had to do. The city of Lagos was more than just her home, it was where her memories, dreams, and sense of belonging lay. Yet, the spirits had spoken, and if she disobeyed them, her beloved community would continue to suffer. With a heavy heart, she began preparing to leave. She packed only what she needed, her hands trembling as she folded familiar clothes and wrapped her mother's old cooking utensils. Word of her departure spread quickly, and the community gathered once more. Even those who had been skeptical of her at first now came forward, offering words of support and gifts for her journey. Baba Ade placed a protective charm around her neck, and Mama Nkechi handed her a small woven bag filled with herbs. "To keep your spirit strong," the old woman whispered. Tears welled in Amora's eyes, but she nodded, grateful for the kindness she had been shown. Before leaving, the market community insisted on hosting a farewell feast in Amora's honor. Despite the ongoing illnesses and unease, they wanted to give her a proper send-off. Tables were set up with dishes from other vendors, and laughter mingled with sorrow as the sun set over the bustling city. Amora moved through the crowd, exchanging hugs and heartfelt goodbyes, her emotions a tangled web of gratitude and grief. Ifeoma pulled Amora aside, her eyes glistening with tears. "Promise me you'll find a way to come back," she whispered. Amora took her friend's hands in hers, wishing she could make that promise. "I'll do everything I can," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. They embraced tightly, knowing that this goodbye might not be the end but was a painful beginning. When dawn broke, Amora stood at the edge of the city, her packed belongings slung over her shoulder. The streets were quiet, save for a few market vendors setting up early. Taking a deep breath, she stepped away from the familiar chaos of Lagos, her heart aching with every step. She didn't know where she was headed, but she hoped that somewhere out there, she would find the redemption she sought, and maybe, just maybe, a way to return home one day. As she walked, the memories of her childhood in Lagos came flooding back, running barefoot through the market with her cousins, helping her mother cook over a roaring fire, and learning to barter with sharp-tongued merchants. She whispered a silent goodbye to it all, clinging to the hope that this sacrifice would not be in vain. The spirits demanded respect, but Amora prayed that someday they would also offer her a path to healing. Amora's journey took her deep into the countryside, where the air was fresher but unfamiliar. Each night, she set up camp by a small fire, her meal simple compared to the feast she once prepared. The quiet was a stark contrast to the bustling market, and loneliness became a constant companion. Yet, in the solitude, she began to find moments of reflection, thinking about her ancestors and the wisdom they had passed down. One evening, as she cooked a modest meal over the fire, a traveler approached. He was an elderly man with a long beard and eyes that seemed to hold the world's secrets. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Amora hesitated but nodded, grateful for the company. The old man sat down, and they shared her simple stew. As they ate, he listened to her story, nodding thoughtfully. "You're carrying a heavy burden," he said. "But remember, the spirits are not your enemies. They can also be your guides." The old man introduced himself as Papa Olu, a wandering healer who had traveled the land for decades. As they sat by the fire, he shared stories of his encounters with spirits, both vengeful and benevolent. "Spirits crave balance," he explained. They will test you, but they also respect those who show genuine remorse and strength. Have you ever considered that your journey is not just a punishment, but a chance for transformation? Amora listened intently, his words igniting a small spark of hope within her. What kind of transformation? She asked. Papa Olu smiled. Only you can discover that. Sometimes, the greatest power comes from understanding your own heart. He handed her a small carved figurine of a protective spirit. This will remind you of your purpose, he said before bidding her farewell. As he disappeared into the night, Amora held the figurine close, feeling a newfound sense of resolve. A week into her journey, Amora stumbled upon a lush grove, a hidden paradise filled with ancient trees and vibrant flowers. The air felt different here, charged with an energy she hadn't felt since leaving Lagos. She approached a clear spring in the center, her heart pounding. This place seemed sacred, almost like a portal between worlds. Kneeling beside the water, she felt an overwhelming urge to pray. Spirits of this land, she whispered, I have come seeking redemption, not just for myself, but for the love I hold for my people and home. The water shimmered, and for a moment, she thought she saw faces in the ripples, kind, ancient faces watching her with interest. The grove's energy felt warm, almost welcoming, and Amora wondered if she had finally found a place where she could begin to make amends. As Amora explored the grove, she heard a rustling behind her and spun around. A young girl, no older than 12, stepped out from behind a tree. Her hair was wild, and her eyes sparkled with mischief. Who are you? The girl asked, her voice light but curious. Amora introduced herself and explained her journey. The girl, who called herself Aisha, listened with fascination. You're brave to seek the spirits, Aisha said. Most people avoid this grove out of fear. Aisha revealed that she had grown up near the grove and knew the ways of the spirits. They test those who seek their favor, she warned. But if you are honest and humble, they may offer guidance. Amora felt a surge of hope. Will you help me? She asked. Aisha grinned, her eyes twinkling. Only if you're ready to face the challenges ahead, she said. With Aisha by her side, Amora felt a little less alone, and together, they began to prepare for whatever test the spirits had in store. The spirits' first test came swiftly. A storm descended upon the grove without warning.